Before we get started, so Jonah wanted to start trying to record these, and I was a little concerned about that because this is as good as it gets, right? So people have to actually see that. It's a little bit scary for me. However, we're going to give it a go and see what happens. With that said, the final point that I had in the series on what is truth, the final thing that I said was that the truth will set you free. And when I was discussing that, I brought up another way that the darkness will attack the truth, and that was through counterfeiting. I mentioned how you only counterfeit what is real, what is true. There's no need to counterfeit something that isn't true or isn't real. And I explained how the FBI's counterfeit division, they fully understand this principle because they spend zero time studying counterfeit bills. They only study the originals. And they do that because by intensely studying and knowing everything about the original, you can easily distinguish a genuine bill from a counterfeit bill. And I brought all that up to say it's the same way in the spiritual battles that we face. We need to intensely study and know everything about God's Word so we can recognize the truth from all the deceit, all the lies that the devil throws at us, right? And in doing so, the truth can set you free from all the snares that the devil uses to try to trap you and hold you in bondage. You can then experience the freedom that Jesus came to give us in this life, in the here and now, and not just for eternity. The truth has the power to set you free from the bondage of the lies, the suffering, and the pain. And in that discussion, I utilized this verse, John 8:31-32. And in there Jesus says, "If you hold to my teaching, you are really my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." So John 8:32 begins with "then," and that refers back to John 8:31, which tells us that you must hold to Jesus' teaching in order to be a disciple. Then once you do that, then you'll know the truth and it'll set you free. And then I also shared, went too far, there we go, the New King James Version for John 8:31, which says, "If you abide in my word, you are my disciples indeed." So now, in order to know the truth, in order to be disciplined by it, or be changed by it into a disciple, you must abide in the truth. You must live in it. You must be immersed in it. And if you do that, if you abide in the truth, if you immerse yourself in it, then you'll know it, then you'll be disciplined by it, then you'll become disciples, and subsequently you'll be set free. And as I mentioned, the sad truth is that here in America, most Christians don't get anywhere near the truth. And as a result, they never become disciplined by it, so they never become disciples, and subsequently, they never become set free. So they end up remaining in bondage to the former things of their life. They're never set free, they never experience freedom. And all of that to get to the point where I want to say, I don't want that to happen to any of you. Because if you remember, my calling and the message God has given me is to help transform lives with the truth. So people will be disciplined by it, they'll become authentic disciples, and be set free from the former things in life that still hold them in bondage. So what I want to do is empower you to experience healing, transformation, freedom, to empower you with the truth, to be set free from the pain, the suffering, the lies, the fear, whatever else it is that may be holding you in bondage. To empower you with the truth, to be completely changed and radically transformed. And then at the end of all that, I concluded with this question right here. What do you need to be set free from? And actually, as I look at that, my brother Wayne wouldn't be happy about that. He's the one that edits all my written material, and he always says you never end a sentence with a preposition.
What's the preposition again?
Right there, from is one, of, things like that. So I would have to say, from what do you need to be set free? That would make Wayne happy if I say it that way.
You know what?
From what do you need to be set free?
You know what?
Either way, whichever way you say it, the question remains the same. So we could list, the airplanes are going over.
Oh my goodness.
Well, this is our first trial run with that. We'll see if it picks that up on the mic. All right, back to this. From what do you need to be set free? So there could be a number of things. Is it not living for Christ and why you're still here? Not doing that, like the list we went through? Or is it separation from God and being in need of salvation? Is it your past painful experiences? Is it fear, guilt, anxiety, depression, or any one of a number of additional painful emotions? Well, whatever it is, my hope in the series that we're about to do here is that you'll experience the true power to set you free. And I want to begin this new series by focusing on 2 verses. Okay? Here's the first one, Philippians 1:29, which says the following: For it has been granted to you on behalf of Christ, not only to believe in him, but also to suffer for him. So in this verse we learn it has been granted to those who believe in Christ to also suffer for him. And here's the second verse I want to look at. 2 Timothy 3:12, where Paul writes the following: In fact, everyone who wants to live a godly life in Christ Jesus will be persecuted. And notice this verse says, everyone, and it says, will be persecuted. So what we're learning here is there are no exceptions. And take a look at this. If you're a believer, what we're learning, you will be persecuted and you will suffer for Christ. So let me just say right off the bat here that it's no secret. God has made this very clear to us. Therefore, you cannot say it's unfair, because God has told us up front it is going to happen. So then we all know it's coming, right? And actually, God is considerate enough to tell us this up front. Now, with that said, however, one thing is still not clear. And one thing, I guess you'd say, is not addressed. And it's the question, why? And this is the question where a lot of issues come up. So why have we been granted to suffer? Why will we be persecuted? And that's the direction that I want to go in this series. Why is this the case? If God really loves us, then why would he allow so much suffering and pain among those who are his children and those who are following him? I mean, doesn't God care about us? I mean, doesn't God really care about us? And in answering that question, you could give maybe what you would call the Sunday school answer and say that God does care about us. He loves us so much. He considered us valuable enough that he sent his son to die for us. And that would absolutely be correct, such an answer. That is a true statement. However, if you're like me, you like I used to be, you might hear that and be thinking, I hear you saying that God considers us valuable enough to die for, but I'm having a hard time seeing how that can be true for all of us. Specifically, I'm having a hard time seeing how that can be true for me. I'm having a hard time seeing how that can be true for me when all I can see in my life is trials, struggles, and pain. And some of you, I know some of you, may even be where I used to be. I used to read the Bible, and then when I was done, I'd put it down and ask God, why do all your promises hold true for everybody but me? Has anybody been there? So you may be asking this, does God really care about me personally? Because frankly, I don't see it in my life. And because I used to be there, I know just how real those feelings can be. And I've also, over the years, seen that and witnessed that in so many other people that I know just how true those feelings can be. So that's why in this series, I'm going to spend some time addressing this issue. And I can't do this without mentioning help overcoming painful experiences, right? Or what we refer to as hope. Because hope was created and is dedicated to helping people answer tough questions like these. Questions like, why does God allow so much pain and suffering? Does God really care about me, like we have up there now, personally? Or where's God when I'm hurting and I need him the most? All those types of questions. Hope exists to help people understand the answers to these questions, to help people overcome their trials and pain, to help people allow God to transform them through their trials and pain, and to help people fully experience a transformed life by equipping and empowering them to fulfill their God-ordained purpose. And I wrote our entire program, which includes 3 books and a total of 71 lessons. I had to count them up to see how many there were. There were 71, all to accomplish these ends. So the point here of making that statement is that there is a ton of information that God has given me to share with this topic. And in going through this series, I'm going to thoroughly address numerous aspects of this topic. And this is a critical thing because of this. Because the area of spiritual and emotional pain is the most misunderstood, the most overlooked, the most mishandled, and the most ignored issue in our society and in our church today. And if you don't believe me, all you have to do is look at the statistics and the trends that address emotional and spiritual pain, because they speak for themselves. And I'm going to share some of these with you now. For example, current divorce rate is 50%. That's a number that I'm sure we've all heard, because that number's been out for a while. And it doesn't matter if you go to church or not. That number still stays at 50%. Most people know that. However, were you aware that for second marriages, the rate climbs to 67%, and for third marriages, the rate jumps to 74%. So what those numbers tell us is that people are not dealing with or overcoming their issues. They just keep packing them up and taking them with them to the next place. Another one, between a half and 2/3 of the children in this country are growing up in either a single parent home or a home without parents at all. Then there are over 1.3 million abortions annually in the United States. 40% of people in the United States will develop cancer. 33% of high school girls report being the victims of sexual abuse, and 16% of high school boys. Over half of the teens in this country suffer from some emotional issue. Then we talk about the economic crisis that the country has gone through recently. What that has done has ended up with countless Americans struggling with financial issues, struggling with the weight of losing their job, losing their home, losing their savings, credit card debt, etc., etc., etc. And in addition to financial loss, there are millions of people struggling with the loss of loved ones, the loss of dreams, the loss of relationships, feelings of isolation, loneliness, rejection, those types of things. And we have millions more people living their lives void of purpose and meaning. You know, I saw numbers that aren't up here, but I saw numbers recently that as much as 90% of the people in this country are unsatisfied in their jobs and their careers. That speaks to that issue right there. Now, if this isn't bad enough, when you add in all the damaging ways that people are trying to cope with their problems, the problems just escalate even further because of this. We all turn to something to help us cope. And look at these numbers. For example, 35 million adults in the U.S. suffer from major depression. That's 16% of our population. But when you consider any type of depressive order, this number jumps to 45 million. How about anxiety? 13 million adults in the U.S. suffer from generalized anxiety. However, when you talk about any type of anxiety, this number jumps to 63 million. Folks, that's 29% of our population. 14 million adults in the U.S. abuse alcohol, and 22 million abuse drugs. Sexual addictions, addictions to pornography and gambling, all those are now rampant in our country. At $13.3 billion, the annual revenues of the sex and porn industries in the U.S., just in our country, are bigger than those of the NFL, the NBA, and Major League Baseball combined. 47% of families in the U.S. say pornography is now a problem in their home. And gambling revenues are 3 times that of the porn industry. We now spend more money on gambling annually than on movies, sports, theme parks, cruise ships, and music combined. Now, I've only highlighted a few examples here, and sadly, there's much more. And what's worse, the trends all show that these numbers are on the rise. For example, the overall suicide rate jumped 200% over the past decade, and it jumped 400% for teens. And now, overall, suicides outnumber deaths by accidents. That's scary.
Is that in America or the world?
This is again in the U.S. Yes, sir. Suicide is now the number 2 cause of death for those 15 to 25, and the number 4 cause of death for those 10 to 14. The number 4 cause of death for those 10 to 14. Divorce. Divorce is now the #1 cause of suicide for adults. The number of families in which children are raised without the father has more than tripled in the past couple decades. 63% of youth suicides are from fatherless homes. Every day, 500 teens begin using drugs and 1,000 begin drinking alcohol. 2,700 unwed teens become mothers every day. That's up 500% over the past couple decades. 8.5 million children suffer from child abuse yearly. And that is a 300% rise in the past couple decades. And I told you about the revenues of gambling. Looky here. Gambling in America is up 2,800% over the past 2 decades. It went from $17 billion a year to $482 billion a year. Now, folks, I could go on and on with these statistics because sadly there's much more. But I'll stop here because I suspect, and I can tell by your faces, that you're already getting the point. The point being, there is an enormous amount of emotional pain today. So much so that no one is immune from the pain of life. And if these statistics for emotional pain weren't bad enough, what's worse is, like I said, the numbers and the trends all show that they're not only on the rise, but they're an all-time high. So what we learned from this tells us that things are getting worse and not better. And folks, you need to understand that this is frightening news for our entire society, because we're in danger of our entire society going down in emotional defeat. All these statistics clearly tell us this ominous information. But in addition to that, I want to make something else very clear. The statistics, I don't know about you, but that's a funny word. I always have trouble saying that one. I have to say it slowly. Statistics, there we go, are not going to be the focus of this series, just as they are not the focus of the Hope Ministry. Because just like me, I guarantee you, you don't need the statistics to tell you that people are hurting everywhere today. If you're gonna try to hit the trash can, you ought to at least hit it, right? Anybody can miss, right? What was I saying? Man, I forgot. No, I remember.
Not about statistics.
Yes. Life, what we all know already is that people are hurting everywhere. We all know that because life hurts all of us. So the only thing you really need to do is look at your own life to know how people everywhere are hurting today, because it includes you. Like I said, no one is immune from the pain of life. And I always tell people, think about it, that's the one thing we all have the most in common. Since no one is immune from the pain of life, it includes you. So what that means is, even though I just went through a whole bunch of statistics, I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know. You may have not have known the numbers attached to it, but this is something that you already know because you already see it, and you see the effects of it all around you, including your own life. As I like to say, hurt people hurt people. So all that to say, the focus of this series is going to be you, just like it is with our ministry, and the ways that you're hurting, not the statistics. Just like with Hope, I'm doing this to empower you to be transformed through your pain and be set free from anything that's holding you in bondage. I just wanted to take a moment to make that clear. And there's two other things that these overwhelming statistics and trends tell us. In addition to what I already said, that things are getting worse and not better, there's two other things. The first one, we learn that the status quo is not working. The data tell us the status quo is not working because pain is either being unmet entirely or it's being handled ineffectively or both. And here's what I want to get at with that statement. The American church, once again, has done a very poor job of responding to this need. In fact, this is another area where the American church is failing miserably. And as a result, guess what? Church has become irrelevant to a large percentage of our society today. So it's no wonder that only 18% of adults in the U.S. regularly attend church anymore. And frankly, I don't blame them. I wouldn't go somewhere that didn't offer any help for all the issues I was dealing with either. It makes no sense. Since only the superficial is allowed in the church anymore, superficial, you don't get real or honest or anything. Just discussions of like, hey, how are you? You don't get past that kind of stuff. How you doing? Fine. That kind of stuff. That's superficial. And honesty is no longer welcome. People are afraid to speak openly and honestly because their fear of rejection. So everybody comes to church with, I'm sure you've heard this statement before, with their church face on, right? And the real man or the real woman has to remain hidden because they're no longer welcome. Folks, what I want to point out here is the church has become the complete opposite of what it should be. Instead of being a hospital for the lost and hurting, it's become sanitized against pain and suffering. Honest feelings, honest sharing of pain and suffering is no longer welcomed in the American church because, like I was saying, nothing beyond the superficial is allowed anymore. If we let hurting people come in with all their baggage and all their pain, it's only going to mess up our country club atmosphere, right? That just doesn't fit with our decor. I hope you recognize this is an absolute disgrace. And since the church won't touch this topic, the majority of people today, including the majority of Christians, never learn how to handle their pain. They never learn it because it's simply not taught. So they end up turning to unhealthy and unbiblical means to handle their pain because, like I said earlier, we all turn to something to help us cope. So the issues that you're dealing with right now, or you will be dealing with tomorrow, are the ones that you're dealing with from yesterday or last year or even decades ago, continue to negatively impact you today and will continue to negatively impact you forever. They still hold you in bondage. They keep you crawling through the, what would you say, the muck and the mire. Have you heard that expression before? And prevent you from living up to your full potential in Christ and prevent you from experiencing everything God has in store for you. So the question is, does that sound familiar? And I know it does to a lot of people because it was the same thing for me. And I know a lot of you know a lot of my story, a lot of my testimony, but just to let you know, when we go through this, I'm going to continue to share my experiences with you. And I'm going to do that so that everybody knows I'm not just preaching you information. because I've experienced what I'm going to share with you in this series. So, just like when I started the series on science, and how science emphatically shows us that evolution is not possible, you could ask a similar question here. You could ask, why should you listen to me? Well, just like I gave you my scientific credentials before we started that series, I just gave you my credentials for this series. And the credentials are that I have lived it. God took an angry, depressed, suicidal, introverted, a self-centered, disappointed man, and not only transformed who I am, but he also transformed what I do. God empowered me through my own experiences to start a new ministry that is badly needed today. A ministry that's based on my own pain and my own experiences and all the truth that I've learned that can be used to reach out and help others. God gave me the message through my own life, and then he empowered me to preach it. So with that said, let me move on to the second point, the second thing that we learned from this, from all these statistics, and that is simply, things must change. And that's what I and we are doing. I and we have purpose to start a revolution, one that goes beyond a Band-Aid for the symptoms to one that focuses on curing the disease. One that doesn't focus on recovery, like a lot of other ministries do, but one that focuses on the principles of God's process of transformation. Because here's what you need to understand about all this. Emotional issues result from underlying spiritual needs. Emotional health and spiritual health are entwined. Therefore, they can't be separated. So by addressing spiritual needs, you can successfully enable transformation and produce emotional wholeness and healing. And in this way, you're appropriately addressing the disease and not just the symptoms. And so that, ladies and gentlemen, is what we're going to fully dive into when we go through this series. And with that, I'm going to end at this point this week, and we will pick it up from here next week.